Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you, my dear students. I hope that you are doing well. A very warm welcome to you in lecture number 26 of report writing skills. I'm sure you all have tried working on the preparation of a curriculum vitae and a resume. Of course, if you are looking forward to join an academic position, so more interested towards designing and preparing a curriculum vitae, whereas if it is a non-academic position, then thinking of preparing a resume based on all the characteristics and features and all the examples that we studied. So if I take you towards all those components, these were the things which were taught and discussed in detail in our lecture number 25. Basics of a resume, now you know what they are. Basics of a curriculum vitae, a CV. Then CV and resumes comparison, so that you may know how you can differentiate between the two. And then some of the guidelines, some of the instructions through which you can of course prepare the best one. And at the end, of course, I shared certain links through which you can develop your resume and your curriculum vitae online. So I'm sure you have done it, and of course you would have and you will be using that resume and curriculum vitae in future to apply for different positions offered and announced by different organizations, companies, institutes. Well, the next step basically after you have applied is a call or an email, but the purpose is that you're going to receive a call to have an interview. And that interview, of course, is going to have a duration for which you will be interested to give your very best. You want to perform your best within that interview, because that is the only stage left between you and the job, because you have already gone through the test, the assessment, you have submitted your resume or your curriculum vitae, and on the basis of your performance and your resume, the material which you have presented, you have been called for the interview. So if you perform your best, then you'll be there within no time serving an organization. But if there is some problem that you face, or as a result of some bad impression that you develop, so you can face some problems. And to avoid it, this is going to be our topic for today's discussion. We'll be looking into some of the interview skills, what basically is an interview, and then looking at all those strategies, those specific set of questions, which of course will be provided to you when we move ahead, when we move towards the concluding part of our today's lecture. But first you need to understand what basically it is, what are the different styles, what are the different types, and what are those strategies or those stages through which you can prepare yourself for an interview. So let us take a start by looking at the origin of this word interview itself, talking about the French word, French alternative, it's this one, and in case of our English, most of the words back in the older version of English language used to be spelled with E, and then they changed with I. So this is the first thing about the origin. But now if we look at the word itself, it seems to be like a clipped word and indicates that it basically refers to something bigger, more expanded. So the thing is that you can call interview as an interaction which is taking place between views of two individuals, like you and me. So if we talk and if we have an interaction, we are sharing our views, so that becomes an interview as well. But we usually call it as an interaction if it's taking place in journal. But if we turn it into a specific context in which one of us is being assessed, evaluated for a particular post in which he or she is going to start serving the organization, then now it's known as an interview. But Looking at the word itself in general, it refers to the interaction of perspectives and in the interaction of views which is taking place between one or two persons or more than two individuals. This is also another meaning that you extract out of the word interview itself, that it is basically to see views of each other or one another. This is basically the purpose, that you want to have this two-way traffic of the exchange of views. I giving my views to you and you providing your views to me in feedback. So in this way, this is the interaction of views, or in short, like an interview. Then this is making it more specific. The basic definition that we have nowadays of this particular word of the interview: one-on-one conversation between a job applicant and employer representative of the employer. So it could be either the employer himself or herself, the organization, or the representatives of that organization or that employer. So you basically have this one-on-one conversation with these people, and now this is the basic definition of an interview. So what is the basic advantage, or what is the significance? Well, it's an opportunity for the employer to match the applicant's qualification with the employer needs. So there we have it, a direct comparison of these two things. The employer needs are compared and matched with the applicant's qualifications. So if these two are equal, then that applicant, of course, would be considered for the job. But if the applicant is unable to meet the requirement, then he or she would be considered ineligible or not meeting that criteria which is required for the post. As a result of which, some other applicant would be given the opportunity of the interview on one hand and then the final selection. Well, this is the basic purpose of the interview. Now moving ahead, of course, interview is not just as something general phenomenon, but of course it becomes specific, and it has some specific types based on the manner in which it is carried out. So we look into the types, and starting from the first one, which is known as the screening interview. And the word itself, screening, indicates that it's more or less related to this concept of sifting some good individuals out of all the other. You can call it as a mob or a mass, but the purpose is there are so many applicants and you want to sift or select the specific ones who meet the criteria, who are more competent, who are better, and for that you basically hold this screening interview. So it's basically the first meeting with the employer in which you basically eliminate the incompetent candidates. Of course, you can have the example in the form of on-campus and job fair interviews. So you know there are different career expo and education expo. So there are different job fairs which are also organized in different cities. The purpose of all these is that different organizations, different employers are there sitting within the fair, and they just want to hunt some capable and some competent applicants who are going to join their organization. So they're basically looking for HR, human resource, to fit into their organization, the capable ones. So the kind of interview which they hold is known as basically the screening interview. You move ahead and we look into the next category. It's called as the follow-up interview, which basically comes after this screening stage. Not all the categories are going to move in a sequence. There are different types with different purposes. This one, call it as a coincidence, are like coming one after the other, because this is the way in which you go through the first one, which is of course the screening interview, and then you move ahead with the follow-up interview. Follow-up means, of course, you have gone through step one, the first interview. Now it's a follow-up stage in which you are contacted again, and this time the purpose is of identifying the finalist for the position after this specific job related question, because the journal beginning is more related towards the background, the experience, so they realize whether this person is competent or capable or not. Once it's done, then they move ahead by asking some specific job related questions, and if you are able to answer it, then you are considered for the final position or the finalist who are going to have the final competition. Just the way you have the final or a semi-final in a tournament, in a similar way, this is the significance of this interview, in which you recognize or identify the finals. Phone or the telephone interview, alternative for screening and follow-up. This is also another category. You may have heard of it and you would have experienced it probably as well, but this is also a general trend, because now there are individuals who would like to work abroad, there are students who want to avail a foreign scholarship, so certainly they simply go through such a category of interview as well, in which their employer or the university representatives are at a distance, and of course it's difficult for you to reach there, it's difficult for them to come to interview. So the alternative for it is the interview is conducted with distance using technology. It can be a telephone, it can be Skype, in which you can have a video call session, video conference session with your interviewer. So that is also another category used when the interviewer and interviewee are located at distance away. So evaluation, of course, in such an interview is based on your responses, the way you are answering, your tone, the intonation, the rise and fall that you bring to show the energy and enthusiasm, your interest, your comfort level, the way you are trying to show yourself to be comfortable with your prospective organization, and adaptability, meaning how much you are comfortable with the use of technology. The more good you are, they'll be assessing it as well, which is why they may have probably chosen this mode of interview. So they would like to see to how much extent are you adaptable, how are you able to manage with this new mode of interview. So it can vary. If we look now ahead towards some other category, so this is the selection interview. Like once you have qualified the initial stages, so you go towards the final stage, the final interview, before the real head, the executives would like to see, you can call them the supervisor or the manager. So they're also sitting alongside with the other people who already have interviewed you in the initial stages, and now they're going to be straight with you and they're going to be the one asking some questions. So this is like the final stage. If you have qualified within the previous stages, hopefully you would be able to do well once you are well aware of the environment. You know, this is also another category that you have to face once you are about to go and join an organization. So this is also one category of an interview. Then search committee interview, because in such a category of the interview, you are basically required to respond to questions from each person. You have a committee of individuals and they really want to know how much capable you are, and each and every one of those individuals within the search committee are like doing a research over you. They are searching you, searching the inner potential which is inside you. So they have some specific questions that they're going to throw at you, and of course it is expected from you to answer those in a well efficient manner. So such a category is basically known as the search committee interview, because this is the interview conducted or supervised by a search committee of individuals who are going to ask one by one certain questions. So for that, of course, this is the tip mentioned here, that in the earlier stages you're probably facing just one individual, but in this one, of course, there will be more than one individual. So the good thing is that if they are like sitting here in front of you, 3, 4, 5, so you, while you are answering the asked questions, can do the alternative way of eye contacting each and every individual, so that they can see that you are just talking to each and every one of them, you are involving each and every one of them within the interaction, and you are quite confident enough with everything that you are saying. So you do not just talk to a single individual, rather you involve each and every one, but of course a bit more focused towards that particular person within the search committee who has actually asked the question. So that's the way you maintain the eye contact. This is also an interesting category of an interview. It's called as a group interview because you're not the only one involved within the interview process. Rather, you go along with some other applicants in the form of a group. And then your collective behavior is basically assessed. The way you behave as a team, the way you perform a team task. So there are different skills which are basically assessed when you are interviewed by a panel, by a committee, by some interviews, when you are basically entering the hall or the place of the interview for a group interview in the form of a group. So you're interviewed as a group, and these are basically the tasks: your leadership, your decision making, your flexibility and adaptability. So these are some of the factors which are being assessed, which are being evaluated, which are being checked to how much extent you are capable and competent enough to handle such a group task or teamwork, and how you're able to manage everyone, because there is always a difference of opinion and there could be clashes, there could be disputes when you are working as a team. So how are you able to manage such a confusion, such a chaos, is your quality which will be appreciated in case of a group interview if you're able to handle it well. Breakfast, lunch and dinner interview. This seems surprising but is actually being practiced. It is used, and the basic purpose of such a category of interview is that you are made comfortable by sitting with those people who are already working within an organization. So you are given the opportunity on one hand to sit with those people, have some chit chat, just discuss the manner in which things are being run over here. So you get used to the environment, and on the other hand you are being assessed. And the third category which is also evaluating are the people who are already working within the organization. So when you talk with them, not only you get used to the environment, but on the other hand they also realize that what kind of people are about to join us within our company, whether they really are competent, whether they are cooperative, whether they are good, whether they know the manner in which they can do this teamwork, they are able to manage this team assignment, whether they can do it or not, because they are already part of it, they have gone through the stages, so they would be able to judge you well as well. So that's why you are also made part of this breakfast, lunch, dinner interview as well. So question answer session with the people working in your prospective organization. So this is also one category of the interview as well. Seems interesting, isn't it the case? Because while designing, while preparing, while studying, of course, I have not even gone through each and every category of the interview. Some of them I have faced, of course, but I'm also interested to go through the other stages of the interview as well, because it will look kind of interesting to me. So, but of course, provided I have sufficient knowledge about how such an interview works, as we are going to study as well. So if we move ahead, this is just one stage that we have covered of the interview, and that is of types, but this is one thing. In addition to this, there are some different styles in which the interview is conducted as well. As we look into the first one, that is the directive interview. Why is it called the directive style of interviews? That basically you are being directed by the interviewer to provide this and this answers based on the specific questions which are being asked and thrown towards you and provided to you. So you are basically required to provide the answers of some raised question. So they'll be the one challenging the whole discussion rather than you, which is the case in category number 2, non-directive, because you are the one who direct the interview by controlling the discussion. If they are providing you with some specific questions regarding such a situation in which you have to perform this task, how are you going to do it? So they are setting up a context and you are providing the answer. Whereas if they just simply say, tell us something about yourself. So they are giving you a space in which you can just start talking about yourself, those good qualities that you consider to be the ideal one to impress your employer, and they'll start thinking to select you for the final position. So that is entirely up to you, but it depends on which kind of style is being used. So sometimes it happens that in the earlier stages of the interview, it seems to be more or less like non-directive. Then with the passage of time, it becomes more directive when some specific questions are thrown towards you. And then once again, as you move at the end, it becomes once again non-directive when you are given the opportunity to just say about certain thing. And then even you are provided with the opportunity to ask certain questions if you have some confusion within your mind. So the manner in which the interview goes on, or the styles which are used, can vary. Sometimes it can be one, sometimes it could be a combination of many, but that's the way it is. Then there is another style which is called as the stress or the confrontational style, as it indicates that it's more or less related to put you in a stressful situation. You really are stressed out and you are confronted. You feel like being confronted. You are provided with some sort of disputed discussion in which you are made to argue, and then there are some counter arguments, and then you have to defend your stance, but the purpose is to unsettle you. They want to unsettle you to see that how do you react when you are nervous? How do you react when you are losing temper? How do you react when you are getting impatient? How are you able to channel that anger to come up with a solution to calm down the whole situation? So then they use this stress or confrontational style. So to evaluate how you respond with this challenging and coming up with a creative answer. So this is also another category. And then there is a behavioral style to seek basically responses that give insights to personality and critical skills. So they would like to judge your personality and the way of your critical assessment, the way you use your critical skills to analyze the situation which is provided to you. In this style, basically, the focus is on your leadership ability, your intellectual competence, personal team skills, team effort, your, once again, adaptability, adjustment, flexibility, and even your technical skills, administrative skills, and communication skills. So each and every one of these will be assessed based on this behavioral style, and such a style even develops from those specific kinds of questions which are asked and placed before you, as we are going to exemplify a certain set of questions which can simply help you to be well prepared for such a question. Because if you have this corpus, I'm not saying it's this perfect corpus or the data of those exact questions which will be asked in your upcoming interview. Of course, these are the most probable questions which their probability is very high. These are the kind of questions, these are the frequently occurring questions. You call them as the FAQs, frequently asked questions. So these are the sample questions which will be coming ahead. But before that, some understanding of the interview and the phenomenon, the types, the style of the interview itself. Now looking towards some of the interview mistakes, some of the most common interview mistakes based on the research, based on the study of all the interviews which have been carried out, and what are the most common errors and mistakes which are basically committed by the interviewee, the people like you and me, if we are going for a job, and what are the errors that we make, the people like us are making, and once we know the error, then we would be able to avoid them as well. So it is time to know what are the general errors which are being committed. So starting here from bullet number 1, if you are arriving late, do you really expect your interviewer will be impressed to see you coming late? You may be provided with some comments like, don't you think it's too early to come here? So it will be, quite mocking, and it will look like a ridicule, but it will have a very negative impression. So I don't think this will have a very positive impression when it comes to your interviewer. So the good thing is to come earlier. But once again, bullet number 2 is not to arrive too early, because if you are arriving too early, this waiting will make you more nervous. You'll get more worried, you'll get more confused, and you'll get tired as well. Have a difference of 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes. Sometime it can go to 45 minutes as well, but in general, this is the way things happen. But in general, 15 to 30 minutes of wait is okay. Sometime if there are more applicants, you have to wait for some time, but generally you are provided with the reported time. And your interview is basically conducted after a while of that reported time, so that you may not have to wait for so long that you get tired, because a person who is already exhausted won't be able to perform well. So not to arrive too early, not to arrive too late. Have this moderate way of coming in between these two. Then wrong dressing, because this dressing should not reflect that you pay less attention to what you are actually doing compared to how you should be focusing more on the way you appear. So of course, focus should be there on what you can do, and the way you dress is also very much important, but the whole focus shouldn't be going towards the dressing itself. For example, too many flashy colors, too many designs won't look attractive when it comes to your interviewer. The way to look at it is that they want to basically talk to you, they want to see your perspectives, they want to have an interaction with you. But if you are putting on something which is too flashy, rather than looking at you, they'll be looking straight away at your clothes. And I don't think this is going to help you at the end of the day. Rather, if you are wearing just a way, if you go through some material as well, there is like an attire of a formal attire, what to wear basically in case of an interview or in case of working in an organization. It is generally recommended to put on something plain. In case of males also, it's usually, I have seen it, gray color, black color, off-white, but basically plain colors and a bit dark color. Same can be said about women as well. Something which is plain. Not saying that you totally have to avoid the design, because of course that goes with your dressing, but the purpose is that keeping things a bit plain, not putting up too much jewelry. Same goes for the makeup as well. It has to be plain. Like I went through some study material for the preparation of it, of course. So generally it was recommended to have plain earrings if you really want to have some jewelry. So earrings will suffice, especially in case of an interview. And talking about the dressing, so the plain dress will look very nice. Same goes for the males as well. So your dressing will look very much attractive, and you will look like a decent individual who is there for an interview if you are wearing something plain, something dark in color. Just the way you can see, the gray color is the ideal color, like the recommended color, so that it may not be too hard, not be too light towards the appearance, not be too hard towards your interviewer. So they'll focus towards you. They will talk to you rather than just looking at what kind of brand are you wearing, what kind of color are you wearing. They'll be focused on the kind of question which they have to ask. So wrong dressing also is a big mistake that you have to avoid too. Some other things are coming ahead too. Then of course your dressing would become wrong if you are dressing basically in a rush. So don't be too hasty. Do it gradually and steadily with some good thinking, just the way we are talking, we are discussing what kind of wearing can you do. So keeping these points in mind, you can just go into your interview to give your best. Then of course smoking, quite common, is done, not saying everyone does it, but the purpose of mentioning here is that this bad breath, bad odor which may develop as a result of this caffeine will have a very negative impression towards your interviewer. So avoid it. Better not to smoke, but still have to not at this time. Then chewing a gum will also simply reflect this casual behavior and attitude, especially during this interview time. So better throw it away and then you can chew it some other time if you really can't get rid of it. If you really want to chew a gum, do it at some other time, not here. No idea about organization and job description. So this one is a very important point, a kind of question that they often ask, that if there is an organization whose name, let's suppose if I say ABC, so they may ask you, so Mr. A, what do you know about ABC, our organization? Would you like to tell us something about it? So this is the kind of question that they may ask just to see how much research have you already done. So if you haven't done anything, once again a big mistake which will go towards the negative side. No preparation. No preparation means that this indicates that some planning, some preparation, some practice was requisite, was required to give your best within the interview. And if it's missing, it becomes the error, it becomes the mistake. So this is something which has to be avoided as well. Not knowing your strength, not knowing your weaknesses. So this is also something, if I say I'm perfect, I know everything, so of course you are not carrying out this is why I've mentioned it within parentheses. SWOT analysis is very much common. Many of you would know, would be well aware of it. For the others, SWOT. S is for strength, W is for weaknesses, O is for opportunities, T is for threat. So you just have to, you can just make a square, and every square in one square S, W, third O, fourth T, and then start thinking what are your strengths, place them in one quarter, then your weaknesses in the other, then what are the opportunities and what are the threats which are coming in the way. Just place all these together and you will know what are your strengths which you really can mention, are the abilities which are going to contribute once you start working in an organization. And the manner in which you can talk about the weaknesses, of course we're going to see it, the kind of questions which are generally asked. So you can mention, of course, some of the weaknesses, but then how did you get hold of that weakness, turn it into an opportunity? So you can mention such a thing as well. Before the interviewer, they'll be impressed because they'll realize this is a person who can face a difficulty very easily. This is the person who of course realizes and accepts all the difficulties of life which are placed in front of an individual, but then challenges that obstacle and then deals with it, removes it from the way. So this is something which you have to do within the professional environment. So many difficulties, so many obstacles would be coming in the way, but you have to handle it. You have to develop this problem solving skills by logical reasoning, by some analytical reasoning, but this is something which is expected to be done. So if you mention your weaknesses and then how you got rid of those weaknesses, that will be the plus point once again for you. But if you simply say, sir, I don't think there is any weakness within me. I'm a very perfect individual with all the strengths and I believe I can do really well for your organization. So they'll have a bit of suspicion and a doubt within the mind because no one is perfect and we have to accept it. We are fallible. We can commit errors. We can make mistakes. Too much talk on a single point. Let's move ahead. Asking too many questions or no questions at all. Because it's similar to the situation like if there is a student who is the whole time there within lecture but doesn't talk at all, doesn't raise any question at all, then the teacher would either have two opinions in mind. Either he or she has understood everything or nothing. In both cases, the student is silent. So same is the situation here, that don't go for too many questions and even no questions at all, because that will put a negative impression. Rather have some specific set of questions, 3, 4, even 5, but 3, 4 seems a bit okay, because after such a talk and interaction with the interviewer, they would like to give you the opportunity to raise something which is there within your mind as well, like anything that you would like to talk about regarding us and the organization. So this is the time. Once the individual says such a thing, you have some questions and you may have certain questions. The kind of question that you can have will be shown to you at the end, but you should have some, because that will reflect your interest within joining the company and organization. Inquiring about benefits too early. So benefit could be the allowances, the package, the increment, the increases, the leaves. So there are many kind of advantages that you get, the benefits, but do not place or talk about this topic, this question too early. This is not the question to be asked, to be honest, at this stage, even at the end of all the interview that you have. There are many other which seems productive, which really shows that you are interested, but this one has to be avoided. What will be my salary? What will be the package? So please try to avoid it until the right time comes. What is the right time? I'll talk about it. Revealing your expected salary package, of course, quite directly related with this point. So these two are related. Try to give your interviewer the opportunity to decide what kind of pay package you should be allocated or you will be provided. Rather than you demanding, once again, they'll have an impression that this guy or girl is there for the money. So of course you'll be rewarded with a salary. That is something which is natural, which will happen for all the services that you're providing. But raising it at the very first place, they'll have a negative impression. They'll develop it within their mind. So try to keep it like the last thing to discuss. And even if it has to be discussed, give them the liberty to talk about it first by a certain question that we will look into in a short while. Getting impatient on some inappropriate questions. So there is always a probability we are humans. Sometimes we may ask such a question either intentionally or unintentionally that may hurt the interviewee itself. Or if I am the interviewee, some of the question may seem like stupid, I would say. But this is the time you have to be a bit patient. You have to be rational and try to just calm yourself down, because you do not have to react. If I am saying that if they are asking some question which is rubbish, the purpose is once again to check your patience level, your threshold, to how much extent are you able to withstand if it's humiliation or an insult. Of course, it doesn't happen to that extent, but if I am saying it, the purpose is that they are testing you. So don't get into their hands. They are just testing you. If you just try to be patient, they'll simply mark you tick that this person has the level of handling tough situations. Because at times you meet such people within your working conditions and they really in reality talk rubbish. So this is the time in which you have been assessed with that level of patience, and you have to show it because you have proven it that you can handle such a situation. So show yourself to be patient. Of course, this is also a big mistake and committed by so many others, because if I am leaving one organization and joining the other, of course, there could be reasons. But if the reason is the behavior of the earlier boss, and if you start talking about that behavior in front of your new boss, then the perception or the perspective which is going to develop within the mind of your boss, new boss, would be that if he or she is saying this thing about the previous boss, once he'll leave me, he'll be talking about this, all this rubbish about me in the future. So now there will be another person to whom he'll be discussing me, just the way he's discussing some other boss in front of me. So in order to avoid such a scenario, such a thing to happen, good thing is just to talk neutral regarding your previous working experience. You can talk about the good things which you have learned, and that'll show that you will be very much dedicated to your upcoming future job in a similar way as you have been in case of your past. Then lack of energy and passion, because if you are trying to show yourself to be dull and boring, of course they won't be interested to have you within their organization, because they'll infer that he or she is going to bore the other people as well, because he or she is too lazy. So rather you have to show the energy. Weak handshake. This is also something, if you meet someone with a very loose grip, with a very weak handshake, so it means that you're not even interested to meet the other people. You're just doing it as a formality. So that becomes the error as well. And over here, it basically refers to the kind of handshake. If you are offered a handshake by the interviewers, you have to meet them firmly to show that you are very much excited and energetic and enthusiastic to meet your interviewer or your future boss. Glancing at your watch time and again. That's why even I don't wear one, so that I may not have to see it, especially at the time of the interview. Point here is that you don't have to look at your watch again and again, especially at the time of the interview, because they will develop, your interviewers will simply infer or deduce from such a behavior that this person thinks he or she is more important compared to the task or the interview itself, or everything which we are doing is not as important as compared to his or her time. So that's why he's looking at the watch again and again. This is something which you do not have to show. Of course, for you, their time which they are spending towards you for the assessment, for the interview is important, which is why you have to thank them at the end as well. So rather than looking at this one, you should be more appealing and trying to appreciate for the time which they are spending towards you. Playing the role of a savior for the company. Don't try to be Superman or a Wonder Woman, because you are not the only one who can just bring the whole change, bring a revolution within the organization. Of course, you have to show yourself that you are also one of those who are competent enough to apply for the job, apply for the position, or to offer their services. But you cannot bring a big revolution all of a sudden. Do not portray such a behavior, because once again, if you come up with some flowery or sublime or big words just to impress them rather than impression, they'll develop a negative impression, and that first negative impression will go on the weaker side, especially for you. With this, now is the time. You have seen all the mistakes, all the errors which are committed, and now is the time that suppose you have received a call and asking you that Mr. or Miss X, you are basically being called for an interview, or interviews on Monday at 9 a.m. and please be there at the reporting time. We'll be looking forward to see you at a specific place. So for such a scenario, now you're getting excited basically that I have an interview, what to do with it. Sometime you'll be getting nervous as well. Well, these are the stages which are going to help you out. Some planning, some preparation, some practice, and you will be perfect. The first thing, of course, you can do is some self-assessment. Self-assessment means that you have to look into yourself, your skills, your abilities, your background, your values, your experience, your education, your training, your career goals. Everything counts. You have to look into yourself to see. Once again, it can be related with your strength, your weaknesses, what kind of opportunities are there, what are the trends hampering them. So once it's done, next thing which matters is understanding field of interest. If there is a field that you like, that you really want to become part of, could be any field. There are many domains in which the individuals are interested to work. So first thing is you should know the field, whether it's an industry, then the trend which exists within that industry, what are the major competitors within that industry, what are the future projects, future projection, and then what are the characteristics of those working individuals who are actually serving or working within those industries. So if you know their characteristics, you will know whether I really match the kind of skills which they require, or whether I would be able to join them based on those characteristics which are already there and are quite common within me as well. So for that, this understanding of the field of interest is also very much needed. Then your employer's information. The employer or the organization which has basically announced the post, its knowledge is also very much important. For that, the knowledge of the products, services, their location, previous and projected growth, the way you see this trend, you always see such a graph, so you have to study it as well, and some of the future prospects as well. So you need to look into all these factors as well, because one of the question which was there among the mistakes as well, that lack of knowledge regarding the employer. So they generally ask you, and if you don't know, then you will have some problems. So therefore, within this planning stage, have this employer's information as well. Moving ahead, you need to have this awareness of the job description as well. If you have studied the job clearly, if you have looked into the vacancy which has been announced, looking at all the description which has been provided, only then you would be able to judge whether you are fit for the post or not. So do have a thorough study of this job description as well. Moving ahead, prior knowledge of the interview format. This can help you a lot, which is why I am making a tick over here, that this prior knowledge of the manner in which interviews are generally conducted in that specific organization within which you want to work, within which you want to serve. So if you know the format, if anyone can help you with, if there is some friend who is already working, or if there is someone who can already guide you with your first meeting, so that can be quite helpful, because that will give you the duration of the interview, the time and place of the interview, who basically is the interviewer, whether it's a panel, a panel interview, selection committee interview, one-on-one interview. So it can help you a lot. Preparing for the anticipated questions. So this is also something that you should do. This is the exercise which can help you quite a lot. Anticipating based on the kind of job that you are about to take, for which you are basically applying. You need to anticipate certain questions as well. And once you have made that list of questions, provide it to a friend, and then try to sit in an environment in which there is a table between you and your friend, and then giving him all the questions. Then say that I want you to conduct a mock interview. It will be a mock interview, but of course you have to be as serious as an employer is, and then simply ask all the questions which are there within the list. You can come up with some additional questions as well, but the purpose of it is to have this self-assessment to how much extent I am able to answer the questions fluently, proficiently, without any trouble, without any hindrance. So go through some mock interviews as well. Making a list of questions. In case you are asked to raise questions, show your interest in the company. So you need to have this list of questions, and this list of questions will on one hand help the interviewer to have this interview, this mock interview. Of course it will be a friend who is going to interview you at the very beginning for your practice. But in addition to this list, you should also make a list of those questions which will be asked by you at the end of the interview. So you need to make a list of those questions as well that you consider to be relevant, because once you provide with an opportunity, then of course if you have written them, either it will be there within your mind, or you can have them in the form of some small sticky note or some chit or some paper, and then you can raise them at the end of the interview process. So that will help once again to show your interest within the company. So this is basically the point. Once the planning is complete, it is time to move ahead towards the preparation stage. And how can you prepare? In case of your very first interview, which many of you are going to have inshallah in your future, for that basically, as a tip, you may write out the answers of those anticipated questions that you have prepared, that you have jotted down in your planning stage. So once you have done it, then you can write out the answers of those anticipated questions. That will help you, of course. How? Point number 2. You practice those responses that you have written in front of you out loud. You read them out loud, and you first read them to simply develop your articulatory skills, to check whether you are speaking it right, pronouncing the words right. Then the next stage is you read those answers. Rather than reading, I would say that you would be quite comfortable simply saying the answer straight away in front of the mirror, because try to say it to that extent that you simply kind of remember the kind of answer that you have to say with respect to those questions. But I'm not saying that the anticipated questions would be equivalent to the kind of questions that will be asked, there can be a bit difference. It won't be exactly the same because over there are some separate individual and you are trying it on your own, but of course the anticipation helps. So once you have read them, you'll be able to remember the basic points, and based on those basic points, now try saying or answering those questions in front of a mirror, because now you would be able to see how you are basically saying it verbally, how you are saying it non-verbally. Talk about the presentation skills, you know what are verbal, what are paraverbal and non-verbal communication. So try to see all those three modes by looking or talking to a mirror, or answering those questions to a mirror and imagining that there is an interviewer in front of me as well. Rather, actually it's you looking at yourself, but the purpose of it is to make yourself comfortable to you so that you may know how to use your facial expressions and gestures. Another thing that you can do is to film or record your responses. This will also help, because based on this filming you can watch the film and judge, to self-assess and simply your strength and weaknesses. This film or video can help you a lot, act as a guide, and you'll be looking at yourself from another person's point of view and looking at your own performance, whether you are doing it right or wrong. So you'll be able to point out the errors as well. And even to make it better, you can ask for feedback from some other friend as well by looking at the video regarding the content, its organization and delivery. Journal instructions. Basically, once again, I would say not too early and of course not too late, because those were already there within the mistakes. But generally, once you have done this planning and this practice, this is this time after those planning and preparation and practice that you arrive early, because there could be some traffic problems. So better to leave early from the house to reach there at the site of the interview well in time. Then the next thing is that you should arrive well prepared, and preparation basically means that you should have this copy of a resume or a CV that you have prepared based on your lecture number 25, not saying exactly the same. You can come up with all the creativity that you think should be there. Then references, referees or their reference letters, of course the ones which are up to date, which are in contact with you, and of course who can be contacted by the interviewers as well. And then some relevant academic transcripts reflecting your overall performance should be there in the form of a folio. Folio, or you can call it as a pocket file. You see the file in which there are transparent leaves in which you can simply pocket your transcripts, simply place them so that they are visible, well protected, and organize them into a sequence so that the interviewer can simply look into your qualification, your overall performance, your certificates, your workshops, the seminars, everything. You can simply organize them in this folio, and you can take this folio with you and it will be self-explanatory. So don't go empty-handed, take something with you. Giving a thoughtful and complete answer, meaning you have to avoid these one-word answers. Yes, no, I don't know, maybe. So this will simply reflect that you are not interested to have even this interview, and you will show such behavior within your working assignments as well. So this one word is not going to work. Rather, thoughtful and a complete answer which explains and reflects your attitude, your perspectives, and your outlook. Try to make a good first impression, because this is going to count throughout your services, even in the upcoming interviews as well. And how do you do it? With a good appearance, with good behavior, and a good attitude. Now this is the time in which once again I take you back towards this talk regarding well-dressed. Who is well-dressed? So we are going to talk regarding, once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, men and women, how they should dress, especially for the interview. So your appearance matters a lot. You have to dress professionally instead of being overdressed with flashy colors or style. So you all have a sense of fashion based on the media industry and the fashion industry, the way it has developed. So you know all the colors, We all, mashallah, have this aesthetic sense. We know how to come up with some different designs, where over here at the time of the interview you should also know the kind of attire or the kind of dressing which appeals the interviewer and which looks best to show you as an individual who is there at a formal situation for a formal purpose, and that is an interview where your perspectives matter. So don't be overdressed, and you have to use your makeup moderately. Of course, I talk about it, a light makeup, earrings can go, then making sure your hair, if you have a mustache, a beard, so the purpose is it has to be well trimmed. Trimmed means it has to be disciplined, well cleaned. Then don't overdo the use of jewelry. I talked about jewelry. The general accepted convention is that earring will go just fine. They'll look okay, will reflect a good personality. Then avoiding strong perfumes, colognes and aftershaves. You can look into their details as well. Just Google it, you will know what are the strong perfumes. Google is intelligent to show you almost all the samples, all the brands, but you have to avoid them, keeping it light and pleasant. Your shoes should be shiny, and your fingernails should be cleaned and clipped, and your glasses should be clean, or the sunglasses should be also clean. So everything should be glittering, should be clean. I'm not saying to use lemon wax, that's not the purpose here. It should be clean, and clean means you should look presentable. Moving ahead with the appearance, you need to take care of your behavior, the way your body language basically reflects. So yeah, when you are offered a handshake, it should be a firm handshake, not to squeeze or crush the other person's hand with a Superman power. But the purpose here is to show a grip, a firm grip, which means that you're energetic to join the company. Then maintaining the eye contact, just the way I talked about it, that how do you maintain the eye contact, especially with the one who has asked the question, with the others who are involved with the panel interview. Try to smile and be friendly, because that is going to help you a lot. That will reflect this positive behavior if you are smiling alongside this interview talk. Do not overextend the interview. It should your answer should be moderate in length, not too lengthy, not too short. It should be explanatory. So therefore, no need to overextend the interview. Even if the answer has been provided, do not try to extend it. You should stop at the time when you consider that the relevant answer has already been provided. This attitude basically, because your behavior is reflected from your physique, your physical actions. Attitude is basically there within your mind. So therefore, when it comes to your mind, how do you prepare yourself for the interview? What are the general instructions regarding your mind? Well, it should reflect confidence and enthusiasm by, of course, being sincere and reflecting commitment towards the organization where you're applying, and then, of course, trying to reflect optimism as well. So this positive approach is going to reflect within your behavior as well, and will be helping you a lot for the final selection. Now that was some general instructions talking about some specific interview types. In case of your interview that you have in the form of a phone or a video or telephone, the point here is there are some certain guiding points which are going to help you a lot. For such an interview, it's better to schedule the interview at an ideal time. Of course, this is the ideal time. It will help you a lot when you are fresh, at an ideal place where there is silence and a good Wi-Fi, so that there may not be any disruption. You should be prepared with a list of points. After doing that SWOT analysis, your skills, your accomplishment, and certain questions, you should be having them in the form of a list as well. Keeping a copy of your resume, because they may have it as well, and with reference to that resume, they may ask certain questions. So you should have that specific point that they are referring to as well. So keep one copy with you too. Listen actively and avoid interrupting the interviewer, because that is going to be a bit more problematic. That will simply disrupt the whole talk. So it's better to Simply listen first and then talk. Speak clearly and slowly, but it shouldn't be very slow. Should have a moderate pace. Then project enthusiasm in your voice, because that is going to help as well. In case of your phone interview, because you're going to have it in a telephone, so it's possible, if possible, you should stand up to revive your energy. With respect to this point, to make it more easy for you to understand, like why is the teacher saying to stand up, especially if we have to talk on a telephone. There was once during my college days, this is the event of my biology teacher, of course. He once called me. I never expected, I don't even know how he got my number, but once he called, I respect him a lot, big regards for him. So he called my number, and basically my father picked it up, and he just told me there is an individual on the phone who wants to talk to you. Okay, I just picked it up, and he said, this is your teacher Anmol, Dr. Wahiduzzaman. The moment he said it, I was very relaxed and sitting, but all of a sudden, because of that respect, because of that honor, I don't know, it happened unintentionally, spontaneously. I stood up and I saluted, and my father started laughing. Relax, you were on the phone. But the energy came all of a sudden just listening to his voice, and this is the energy that you need over here in the interview as well, which is going to help you by feeling that everything is real, happening in front of me rather than on a phone. Smile at intervals to have its effect in your voice. Don't have a dull tone, dull voice. Smile to have its effect. You should avoid such filters, because of course the interviewer can't see you, so these expressions, these filters would be very much visible. So will be visible and should be avoided. You should dress formally to have an interview mindset. Once again, the same impact. Feel that although it's on telephone, but still it's an interview, so you should try to dress formally as well. Have the interviewer's website open for reference as well, because they may ask certain questions related to the website as well. For a video interview, of course, you will be there in a video conference session, so you are well aware of it, especially by looking at a telephone, your smartphones. So if you have a Skype call or a Skype session, so once you look at the cam and then you look at yourself, so your eyes are looking directly at the screen once you look at the cam. But once you start looking at the screen, your eyes goes down. So you have to keep your eye straight, and for that you have to look at the cam basically. So that's why look at the cam instead of the screen for eye contact with the interviewer. Of course you can't see the interviewer, but of course it's there on the screen, but to have a direct eye contact or to make him or her feel like you are trying to have an eye contact, look at the cam. Dress like an in-person interview. Pick a place with a neutral background. Things are quite the same, you're getting it. Get used to technology by running a practice interview. Just the way you have a mock interview, try to run a practice interview to get used to the technology, and pay attention to the body language, because now your video is being made visible to the other interviewer as well. Instruction for specific interview types. And within this, you are going to have now the second round interview. And in this second round, first screening is over. For second round, of course, you already had this first interview. The first thing is that review what did you do in your first interview, because that is going to help you. After that, research the employer once again to gather more information, because this one will be a bit more tough, more job specific and more organization oriented. So need to do more research and try to find staff members working in the company, not the one which are part of the hiring committee. They're going to help you to know more about the organization, so that you may be able to answer it well as well. At the time of the interview, now like this is the place where you are sitting, this is the area, and right in front of you you have some people who are there. So this is the time, even you can do it before it, turn off your cell phone so that it may not even beep once. So this is not the time, turn it off. Be respectful to everyone, respect them. Do not put your belongings, whether it's a briefcase, attaché case, or a bag or a file, do not put it unless needed. For example, if they want to see your files, then you can provide them. portfolio can be provided, your dissertation can be provided, but when it's provided or needed, then you give it. Otherwise, keep them aside. Just remember, in case you received a verbal offer, do not accept or reject it immediately. So in case of any offer which is made to you, rather than just simply going for it, okay, I'm happy to accept it, ask for some time when you are provided with a space for it. So you can just simply ask for some time, and that will reflect that you're quite serious. You take everything seriously and you consider thinking before performing an action. So this thinking has to be reflected. For that, it's always good to ask for some time before accepting or rejecting an offer. Nature of the interview question is also very much important, and which is why you have to be made aware of it. So there are different types of questions which are asked by the interviewer, but they are generally divided into these three categories. You have these traditional questions, which are basically related to your experience, background, personal qualities. In order to reflect your behavior, we have these behavioral questions, through which the interviewer try to predict your future behavior based on your past behavior. And then it becomes more job specific when they ask these technical or case questions, more field specific. These are the kind of questions which are generally asked when it comes to your traditional questions. Tell me about yourself, why are you interested, what do you know about us, why should we hire you, describe your ideal job, what are your greatest strengths and weaknesses. Once again, do you see? Tell me about an accomplishment you're proud of, what have you learned from your failures, what motivates you to do good. So it can be, this one can be a general category, and even you can find it in the behavioral category as well. So basically they want to study your behavior, that whether you're able to reflect your strengths and weaknesses, or whether you're trying to hide your actual or real behavior. So it can go in both sides, but this is the general category of those questions which are considered. What motivates you to do good work? Moving ahead, how do you prefer to be supervised? How would a former supervisor describe you? How about your friends? Why did you attend this university? What was your major? What did you enjoy? What do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Do you plan to return to school? What other position are you interviewed for? So this can be one question as well, and you have to answer it tactically as well, keeping in view all the factors so that you may not harm the overall interview process. You talk about the behavioral question with respect to the interpersonal skills. This can be a question: have you ever dealt with a strong disagreement among team members, or what did you do? Tell me about the most difficult or frustrating individual and how you approached the situation. Tell me about a time when you had to be assertive. So with respect to communication, tell me about a time when you had to present complex information. Describe a time when you used persuasion to convince someone. Tell me about a time when you use written communication skills to convey an important point. In case of taking an initiative, provide an example of when you had to go above your call of duty. Tell me about a project you initiated. So there are different modes, there are different nature of question. In order to extract the creativity and innovation within you, describe a time when you provided a creative solution to a problem. What is the most creative thing you have done? So there could be a list of questions, I would say. With respect to the leadership, tell me about a time when you influenced the outcome of a project by taking this role of the leader. Describe your leadership style and provide an example. Provide an example that demonstrates your ability to motivate others, being a leader. In case of planning and organization, tell me about an important goal of yours. How did you reach it? How did you plan it? How did you organize it? Describe a situation when you had many assignments. What step did you take to finish them in time? Provide an example of what you have done when your time schedule or plan was upset by unforeseen circumstances. So there are difficulties, and how did you plan and organize to get out of it? So these could vary. In case of looking at the flexibility which is there, describe a situation in which you overcame a personality conflict. Describe a time when you were faced with issues that tested your coping skills. How did you cope with it? Describe a time when you received constructive criticism, and how did you deal with it? in case of your decision making skills, provide an example of when you had to make a difficult decision and then how did you approach it. Describe a time when you had to defend your decision. Summarize the situation where you had to locate relevant information, define key issues, and so on. I'm just trying to go through first few lines. You can look into it in detail. Now there is an approach, basically there is a formula in order to deal with these, or in order to answer a behavioral question. You can call it as a STAR formula or a CAR formula. Almost the same, just for you to remember. STAR basically refers to situation, and the task, the situation in which you were involved, the task which was to accomplish. A is for the actions which you took, and R is for the results which you achieved. And basically, if possible, you have to quantify the results as well. So this is basically the STAR formula. And then you have a CAR formula as well, in which C refers to the context of the whole event, A is for the action that you took, and R is once again for the results, once again quantifying them. So the application of, this is the example of the application of CAR formula. This is the question: describe a time when you worked in a team and what role did you play. So over here you have the context. Last semester I was part of a team of 5 people, and then what was the action? I was a team leader in charge of coordinating, so I took the initiative to create a meeting schedule, and then there are some other tasks as well which were performed. And then what was the result? As a result of my efforts, we finished the project 1 week ahead of the schedule, and we were chosen as the group with the most innovative marketing plan. So that's how you provide the structure, and you can look into it to provide the complete answer. In case of your technical question, of course, more common in case of these fields, finance, accounting, consulting, and so on, your questions may be related with concepts learned from coursework, industry knowledge, and specific skills. So what you can do is practice and consult other workers and alumni, because they're going to help you what kind of technical questions are asked within our organization. So this will be quite helpful. In case of your tricky questions, some of the tricky questions have been assembled here, and you have to keep certain points in your mind. Although seem simple, but you have to reply to this about yourself question, keeping in view your audience, what is the nature of the audience and what is the purpose. And you have to talk about yourself, reflecting those skills which are there within you and are needed within the organization as well. Once again, meeting the needs of an organization with your qualifications. So that's how you have to tell about yourself. What are your greatest strengths and weaknesses? I think now we know how to answer it, but there is a good clue for you upcoming, but you have to be honest and turn it into an opportunity. What are your salary expectations? Once again, the important one, I told you, do not bring this from your side. If it comes again and again from the other side, then you can start with, I'm sure you have a range in mind, sir. So if I may ask, what are you willing to offer? And in this way, you are throwing the ball at their court, and then if they come up with a figure, then you can do the negotiation. But do not just say, I need 40, I need 60, I need 75, I need 80. So they're going to bring you down. The good thing is, let them decide first and then do the negotiation. This is one sample of the strength weakness answer. You start with the weakness and then you turn it into a strength. So that's how you talk about it, and you can just study the sample. One area that I've been working is more with public speaking problem is basically there, and then how the writer of this whole talk, or the speaker, has gone through certain sessions to get hold of that public speaking skills and then became confident at the end, is something that you learn from this mode of answering this strength weakness answer. So this is basically the list of the questions that you may ask the employer at the end when they say anything that you would like to ask from us or the panel or the committee members. So what kind of training do you offer to the new employees? Very relevant question. They're going to talk about it. When and how are the employees evaluated at the end? What are the best or difficult aspects of working in this organization? What are the biggest challenge facing this group? How would you describe the culture to this organization? What do you see unique about this organization? What are your plans? How would you describe this organization management style? And in addition, what are some typical first year assignments, because you'll be the first year one? How does this position fit into the overall organization structure? May I have your business cards so that you can have this one-to-one correspondence even after the interview? And what are the next steps in the hiring process? So in this way, you're showing that you are interested to listen or hear more from these people who are carrying out the interview. And to end it in a good way, you had a good conversation based on all these questions which you have answered. After the interview, of course, you write a brief thank you note reiterating your interest and stating why you applied and why you are the ideal candidate, and that you can do based on your skills which you have learned of writing a letter. So now you have to write a thank you letter. You know the addressee and you will be the addresser. So now you know how to do it. Evaluate the whole interview process, and based on it, then you write a thank you note. And then still, if you are not hearing anything from them, then it's time to write a follow-up email. In case of silence, you have to communicate after a wait of a week or two to show that you are still interested for the position and would like to hear something from that.
Meet Sarah. She's a graphic designer. She has applied for a job at a gaming company, but is worried about the interview. Lecture 26 has helped her prepare for her interview. Let's take a look at the details. An interview is a one-on-one conversation between a job applicant and the employer. It is used to match the applicant's qualifications and abilities to the employer's needs. There are 4 kinds of interview styles: directive, non-directive, stress or confrontational, and behavioral. Some common mistakes that are made in an interview are late arrival to the venue, improper dressing, smoking or chewing gum, no preparation or lacking knowledge about the organization, getting impatient or glancing at your watch, not having any idea about the job description, inquiring about benefits or salary too early, criticizing your old boss or job, and lack of energy or passion. When planning for the interview, review your skills, knowledge, and career goals. Prepare the anticipated questions, assess the job requirements carefully, and have a background information about the employer. While preparing, practice saying your responses out loud in front of a mirror or to a friend, and ask for feedback on the content, its organization, and delivery. Here are some general tips for the interview. Arrive early and arrive prepared with all documents organized in a folio. Avoid one-word answers. Make a good first impression with appearance, behavior, and attitude. Dress professionally. Avoid heavy jewelry and makeup. Avoid wearing strong perfumes. Make direct eye contact. Maintain upright posture. Project confidence and optimism. And remember to turn your cell phone off. The nature of the interview questions may vary. There are 3 categories of questions that may be asked: traditional questions, behavioral questions, and technical questions. Traditional questions are related to experience, background, and personal qualities. Some may be, why are you interested in this position? Or what are your strengths and weaknesses? Behavioral questions are used to predict future behavior from discussing past events and situations. Questions may be related to your interpersonal and communication skills, along with your leadership and organizational abilities. Technical questions are related to the job and field. They may be questions related with concepts learned from coursework or industry. You can get some tips from other workers of that organization to answer some of these. After the interview, be sure to send a follow-up email to thank the committee. Restate your interest in the job, and lastly, inquire about the result of the interview. Well, Sarah is now ready for the interview. Good luck, Sarah.
And with this, I believe and I'm sure you're going to get the final selection call and you'll be asked to come and collect your contract. And I'm very much hopeful and I wish you best of luck for your new upcoming career, because this resume thing and the interview skills is going to help you a lot if you practice it properly. You have the list of questions, have all the mock interviews revise it, record it, watch it again, develop your skills. You'll be the perfect interviewee of all time. All of you. That won't be the end. Yeah, just turn it into a chain reaction, spread it among others so that we all can be good workers, good citizens, and good employees of our organization. And with this, I say we have covered all these successfully. I wish you best of luck. Till our next lecture, lecture number 27, is goodbye and thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum from my side.